I moved here to coach at Seneca High School in
Okay.
Oconee County, and now
Yeah.
I'm living in Greenville.
Oh, okay. So, I mean, I was in Spartanburg for a while.
Yeah.
Coached at Spartanburg Methodist College. My parents actually currently live in Irmo still. My whole family does.
Oh, okay.
I got an older sister, Ashley, my younger sister, Taylor. They're both married, have families. They're down there in Irmo, like
Did
Columbia area.
they moved
Our
down here
assistant,
when?
our assistant, or I guess she's a head coach now for the women's program, but she's from that Greenville area, and Blue Ridge, I think is where she's at, where
Yeah.
she's from originally.
Did they all move down when you went down to Newberry? They moved
Yeah,
down
my
after?
dad and mom did eventually. My sister was probably the first, my older sister was the first one to come down. Uh, just kind of relocating, dumped the boyfriend, moved down, and then found a job, got married, that whole story. And then my younger sister actually ran track at Lenore Ryan in North Carolina. So she was kind of already down near here, and then parents retired and moved south, the normal thing there. So they kind of picked somewhere. Columbia is kind of similar. I don't know I mean, Columbia is to me is very similar to Tom's River, and it's not far off. They got the lakes, you got your
Yeah.
beach, your water access, so it's nice for them. But they've been there now 10 years, I think.
It's funny you mentioned that because Jimmy and I always talk about that different places where we've been. It's like, oh,
Yeah,
it's Tom's River. It's like Tom's
yeah,
River.
yeah. That's my comparison. Like Tom's
It's
River,
like
Philly. I'm like, all right, it's
every
like,
town USA.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, 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 yeah. Yeah.
Sweet.
That's cool though. So you're up Greenville. That's cool.
Yeah. Yeah. All right. We are back on the mat tonight. We're going belly to belly with Huntington College in Montgomery, Alabama, head wrestling coach Matt Oliver. Matt is in his 12th season of college coaching, his ninth as a head coach. He is a NCAA All-American. He is a four-time NCAA qualifier. He's a New Jersey State champion. He's a two-time New Jersey State place winner, and most importantly, a Region 6 alumni. Matt, how are you tonight? Thanks for joining us.
I'm doing well. Thank you guys for having me, man.
Yeah, absolutely. Matt, probably the first question to kick things off, and this is probably the most important one, and I'm pretty sure I know the answer, but we ask all our guests from New Jersey this question. Is it pork roll or Taylor ham?
I'm going pork roll.
Attaboy.
Yeah,
Awesome.
pork roll, egg, and cheese. It's like that's what it is.
Yeah. It's funny. I went to there's a place here in Greenville called
Yeah.
Jersey Bagel Brothers, and they have their menu
Oh, that's new then.
on the
Yeah.
wall, and it said Taylor ham and cheese, and I went up and I said, I'll have a pork roll, egg and cheese,
Pork roll, please.
please.
Yeah, what they
They got it
say.
right, so
Yeah, that's funny. You can actually I think some places down there in Alabama, you can find them in the store. They're just expensive. And
yeah.
you get like four slices of pork
Yep.
roll.
Yeah, it says John Taylor on the
Probably, yeah,
package.
probably. I think it's a red packaging or something like
Yep,
that.
yep.
Yeah.
Matt, so with all our guests, we like to present the fans kind of how we found them, how we know about them. And like Rich said, you are a Region 6 alum. You and I kind of dabbled around the same weight classes, but we never got to touch base in a
Yeah.
match. But we've been in plenty of practice rooms on Team New
Yep.
Jersey
Yep.
together, both funky guys. So I was always paying
Yeah.
attention to what you had going on and obviously followed you in college and
Yeah.
seeing you've been coaching. And Rich was like, hey, you need to hit Matt Oliver up. He's coaching down in Alabama. So
No, yeah, that's all. I'm glad you guys did, man. It's cool.
yeah. And like Rich said, you've been coaching for 12 years and
Yeah.
there's a lot of changing that goes on in that 12 years of growth. Starting off as an assistant coach, you've kind of been all over the place. You did some time at Newberry, then you were in Kansas,
Yeah.
JUCO, then
Yep.
back to South Carolina, now in Alabama. How has your coaching changed in that 12 years?
Yeah, it's been an interesting. I kind of jumped right into it, but I've always kind of told people too that I've known. Like I actually just told a recruit this last week that I kind of knew I was coaching from when I got into college, into wrestling, into high school. I mean, I grew up around a family of coaches. It was just kind of natural to us and to me. Um, so for me, like that, the Newberry job was kind of I was finishing my career, finished my academic, my degree. And just it was there, I was helping out doing a club or doing that, volunteering with the college and just part-time work, training with those guys. And that obviously wasn't there's nothing permanent about that. So it's just kind of let's just get through the year and figure it out. We actually had a teammate of mine and a roommate that found a job or was already graduated a year before, found a job out in Kansas. So I went from coaching, which was really wasn't a hard transition from the D2 to JUCO where I was, at least to me, because talent wise, we were still pretty talented where we went. So Neosho County Community College was a job I took as a second assistant there, and they're in Southeast Kansas, which is the middle of nowhere. It's 2.5 hours south and 2.5 hours south of Kansas City, and like 2 hours east of Wichita. It's in the middle of nowhere. I used to tell people when I was out there, I was just witness protection, and I was just out there for, because I got sent here. And kind of and that's kind of the way I thought of it as a coaching in my coaching career. This is something I had to do to start, officially start that coaching career for me and get experience. But like I said, the transition was easy. The 2 years that I was there, we were top five in the country. We had, I think, five All-Americans the one year and six the next. One of them, I want to say one of them that graduated was a D2 champ, transferred to St. Cloud, Tim Prescott. And then we had a bunch of other All-Americans that transferred. I can't remember at this point where they went and forget, but we had guys there. So the room and the wrestling and all that was the same. I think I took to recruiting pretty easily. Um, but I'll tell you the hardest jump was I think how unprepared I was maybe to be a head coach. So when I went, it was really only 2.5 years of being an assistant. And then I kind of jumped and found an opportunity to take a head coaching job in a comfortable, what I thought would be easy of, let's just go JUCO. I found a JUCO back down South Carolina. My parents had moved down at that point. They were kind of already in South Carolina, so it was closer to home for me. But I really don't think I was prepared as much to be a head coach. And I don't think I kind of just jumped into it and said, let's try it, and see how it works out. And so my years at Spartanburg Methodist College, the job I took, that was kind of it wasn't bad. I mean, we weren't unsuccessful. My first year, we had a national finalist, so we had success. It was an awesome jump start, but I think as a whole, operating and running a whole program was quite a challenge. And I think more so with the resources that I was giving, the salary, the budget, that kind of stuff was really very like, hey, you got nothing, go figure it out. And my father, as much as he's been involved in my life and my career at wrestling, I used to take him on the roads at Spartanburg, and he'd drive up and drive the vans for us. He'd coach in the corners at college tournaments, and it'd be us two coaching, 20 college kids, across the country. But the problem was, you didn't get the kids we weren't getting kids, obviously recruiting wise, it was me recruiting 25, 30 kids a year. So your retention rate was just, not very good, but we had that core, we still had a core group of kids that were very talented. So we had your five, six, seven kids that were super talented. And probably by the time I left, we probably had 10 to 15 kids that were super talented. But it was just, running that whole operating program, fundraising, retention, grades, that kind of stuff was super challenging there at Spartanburg. And I think part of it through what I've found and I think being here at Huntington now, recruiting is huge when it comes to, even retention, even your program, your culture, everything you have as a program, recruiting is the number one thing. When I tell a lot of our young coaches and our assistants that come in here, I could care less what else you do here, right? You could never run a practice, you can never work out with a kid, but if you can sit here and recruit me 10 kids on your own by yourself, you'll always have a job, right? But 10 kids that fit the mold, and what I mean, it's not just 10 nobodies, it's 10 kids that do fit the mold of what that college is. So I did kind of learn that at Spartanburg, but the I think struggling at Spartanburg helped me a little bit in realizing what I wanted to do and that I did want to coach and I wanted to be a head coach in college. I just, I knew Spartanburg was a stepping stone, and it was another one of those like, hey, I'm just gonna do this. I got to do it to help my career. Initially, I only thought it would be 3 years, right? And this is kind of uh, my rationale was, if you look at most applications, to be a head coach at a 4-year school, which is what I wanted to do, Oh, 3 to 5 years of head coaching experience, right? That's what everybody always said. That's what all the applications say. It's all lies, but it's just general speaking of yeah, 3 to 5 years you will want. So I was like, all right, I'll stay at Spartanburg 3 years and then I'll look for a job. And I did. I tried that 3 years. I had a job. Ended up missing out on that. Had a bad interview, just kind of said the wrong things. And then kind of was stuck, not really stuck at Spartanburg another year, but it just took another year to find where I wanted to be. And Huntington ended up being that fit. Um, but the transition from there to here was probably my biggest transition of like, I had a understanding with myself because it was now, hey, I'm at a 4-year school. It's a little more prestige there, right? A little more expectations, I think. A little more expectations of retention and fundraising and just overall upkeep of a program. You are that, operator of the program, right? You are the one that handles 90% of everything. Um, but the biggest thing was like, hey, all of a sudden I went from having no help, no budget, no nothing to I got here at Huntington, and that was one of the attractions that I knew was, hey, you have help, you have a budget, you have, you're comfortable now salary wise, you're doing well, and the things around you are, people around you want to see you succeed. And it was like, oh, hold on, that was something I wasn't used to. The downside at first was like, hey, I knew we weren't going to be very good, right? And it's not a knock on like where we were or who we had beforehand, but it was just, hey, like, hey, I've wrestled Huntington when I was at Spartanburg. We had wins against them, so I kind of had understanding like the level of where Huntington was. So that was just a big jump where I went to being again when I was at when I was at Newberry, super talented. We were at Neosho, we had a super talented team. Spartanburg, I had super talented individuals. We had finalists, we had All-Americans multiple time. I had a number one ranked kid in the country. So I went from that to going to Huntington where I was like, man, I told myself early on that like, hey, this is a complete reset. We are not very good. We're not going to the national tournament. And it may be quite some time to go to the national tournament. So that was that big, okay, fine. But the positives were, hey, I have a program and a budget and everything, right? That I just talked about. So that was a big challenge, a big jump for us. But I tell everybody the story of like I had to get used to having help at first. And that was probably like one of our she's a associate athletic director, I guess her title is. She does more game day ops, I would say, every her day-to-day stuff. And we had one of our first events that she was like kind of just like, hey, what do I do? What do you need me to do? And I was like, nothing, move away. And kind of just started doing everything. And we had to sit down afterwards. She's like, yo, like you can't do that. Like, don't touch that. Like, these are mine. I'll do this. You just tell me what to do. And I was like, oh, that's how it works. So I had people that helped me. I was like, well, guess it. Give me some time. I'll get used to that. Um, so it was, but that was kind of that like just that help I had. Plus, I had an assistant coach. We have a strength coach here. I don't even have to touch strength and conditioning type stuff. So it's been a quite the pleasant change when I got to Huntington. Although, sure, success-wise, we're just now coming into like truly being a successful program. I think we had a top 20 win this year, so it's been 5 years, even with COVID hitting. So I think we're still in that game plan of where I thought we would be. But it's just been I found out D3 and especially where we're at in the South, where D3 is not huge, that's just a slower process to be successful as a program as a whole.
Talk about the importance of recruiting and how much emphasis you put on with the assistant coaches of that's really, what you want from them is getting good quality kids. And coming from New Jersey, where there's a wrestling club on every corner, like a Starbucks, what have been some of the biggest challenges in recruiting kids in the South?
Yeah, so I mean, like I said, recruiting's number one. Recruiting is your own is like I've told people this. Coaching wrestling is 25% of your job here. Recruiting is 75% of it, right? And we have this saying here, a lot of us coaches go by, and our strength coach is probably the one coining this, but without students, there are no coaches, right? And that's a fact. So if you can't recruit, right, you don't have a job. And that's kind of my push for assistance of like, first and foremost, man, like you've got to understand that we've got a limit or like a minimum of, hey, if we don't have X kids on roster, right, we don't have a job. So you have to have that standard of you have to bring in kids, right? But then it comes the challenge of, again, like you talked about earlier, it's like you got to have the right kids. And Huntington's one of those schools of I'm not recruiting everybody. It's not like where I was at JUCO and even D2 a little bit, where I'm just taking anybody you can, anybody that's got talent. If you stink, fine, you quit 3 months later, whatever. You just want to get 30 kids. That part I think is easy. You can get 30 kids to come wrestle for you every year. But are they, good character kids? Do they make good grades? Right. So for Huntington, it's I think a little bit more of a challenge. Not that we restrict ourselves a lot and we do make it harder, but we have college standards that we're trying to keep up and the stuff and just the academic side of things and the culture side of things here at Huntington that we want to keep up with. So, and we don't want to kind of lessen those standards as a whole as a college, to just accept anybody, any grades, any kind of financial situation. So for us, I mean, if you're talking Huntington specifically, like, we're looking for kids that are like currently to get accepted for us is a minimum 3.0. We used to have ACT requirements, and I think up until like a year after COVID, we finally sat down. I was like, yo, ACTs are kind of not smart right now. Kids aren't taking them. You can't require an ACT if nobody's taking it. So we kind of just said, oh, okay, we were on the last to say, hey, no ACT requirements. But a 3.0, if you're looking at a lot of D3s, a lot of D3s don't have a standard when it comes to academics. And they're just, I mean, I could tell you a bunch of D3s and some of the top in the country that basically you write a letter, why I want to go to the college, and turn it in, and they'll accept you on that. Right. For Huntington, we have a little bit higher of a standard. Right. So it's a little bit harder to get in. And not that we're super high, we're not, Ivy League D3 or anything, but we are just, hey, we want these kind of kids, these grade kids. We want, we believe in that standard. So it does take a lot more work, I think, for us. But again, that's part of recruiting. Recruiting's all day long. We have a saying that's a recruiting never stops. I don't care if it's the middle of the night, if it's 1 o'clock, if it's a holiday, or if you didn't have your phone on you or you're asleep, right? Recruiting never stops. You're always able to pick up a phone and call somebody and text a kid. Um, so for us, it's like I'll give you an example for Huntington. We had over 100 and I think we had 120 applications this year, and we committed 14 right now. So it is a kind of a numbers games at a little bit of a sense of, hey, I got to get as many kids that I think are interested applied. And then let's see what sticks of, let's narrow that down of, okay, man, these kids, I've never heard of them before. These kids I've seen, I know these kids in the local area. Um, and you're kind of narrowing that down from there. And that's kind of my assistant's push is like, hey, just get as many kids as you can applied. We'll narrow it down. Right. But at least we have that pool. And at least it does show to administration, like, hey, 120 apps we talked about this with our class coach. And we kind of had a mini gentleman's bet of like, oh, I'm gonna get more than you. Right. Of like, yeah, I'm gonna get more apps than you. Right. And it was like, all right. So me and him both did about the same numbers applications. But that's a huge number. But we talk about our success rate. You're really only successful about 10% of the time, 15% of the time when it comes to recruiting. And that can be a challenge as well, right? Rejection. There's a lot of coaches that don't take rejection very well and don't understand when a top recruit and this guy just says, hey, I love you, love the camp, love everything, but hey, money's too much. And it's like, well, so that's another thing you've got to kind of narrow through and know your financial, where are your limits recruiting wise with finances, right? What kind of kid can afford what it's going to cost? With Division 3, as much as there are some schools pulling fake money around, it's pretty cut and dry what you get, right? And I would say most of them do cost money. So that's one of those things where I have conversation with kids. It's just willing to, how much money are you willing to invest to us? Like, what do you think our value is? Right? We have kids of all likes of financial, the really rich to the really poor that pay for Huntington. I would say most and all of them have that financial education to understand, okay, I'm investing this much into it. I get it. It's well worth it. And they believe in it. Um, so I'd say probably, again, one of the harder things too, though, down here is just being in Alabama. It's not a large state when it comes to wrestling. As much as we have super talented kids in here. Corey Land, wrestling out at UNI, is a world silver medalist. I think he just qualified again for a U20 world team or whatever it was in freestyle Greco. Right? We have top kids there. We have top kids in our state. But I think for us being D3, no one might market the amount of D3 kids we have in Alabama is hard. And that's a hard thing with Division 3 is a lot of your recruiting is locally based, right? So for us and recruiting wise, how are we finding kids? Like I've honestly had to move into Georgia more. Georgia right now is one of the better and larger states in the South, and then I think what's been successful with Georgia is it's not, you don't have your small group of Division 1 kids and those kids that think they're Division 1 that just all go there. There's a good mix of kids that go NAI, D2, D3, and obviously your bunch that go Division 1 there. So Georgia's been quite the hotbed for us. So I've kind of been focusing on that since it's such a large state, but it's just a little bit more of a challenge for us because you're recruiting against a bunch of NAI schools and a bunch of D2s for those kids. And that's where it gets to be challenging of how well can you sell your program that does probably cost a little bit more money, right? And making those kids believe that it and understand and know that you're worth it, the college is worth it. So it's a lot. It's very detailed on that. I mean, a little long-winded answer, but it is like getting into coaching and college coaching is something where you have to understand that. And you have to understand your college, the division, because if you don't understand that, I've talked to a lot of coaches and just recruiting wise, they think every college is the same. Oh, yeah, I'm just gonna take this job and I'm gonna get all these kids. It's like, dude, I don't think you understand. You took the worst college coaching job in the country at the worst college like that probably should have just dropped the program. You're taking a job there, and now you're complaining a year later. Oh, I can't recruit kids. These kids just don't want to come here. It's like, well, you should have known that taking that job. Not every school is the same and they can't recruit the same, right? It's completely different. And I talk about this with the life coach. You talked about them earlier, Coach Omi. Like, me and him don't really recruit the same kids. It's just different. We have a different market, and there's a couple of the NAIs in Georgia that I really just don't ever cross paths with. And it's nothing against them. They have their success. We have ours, but it's a different market. So understanding your market of what you're trying to look for in kids is huge.
Matt, I appreciate you being so cut and dry. Like, hey, you're gonna have to pay to wrestle in Division
Yeah,
Three, and if someone
yeah,
says they're giving you money, they're probably lying to you.
yeah. It's fake.
And
It's fake.
you also mentioned being in Alabama, being in Division 3 in Alabama, and kind of having those shackles on you as far as
Yeah.
type of kids you're looking for, type of kids that want to go there, and then also the limitations of when you're recruiting, you got to worry about a school giving them money. So how do you not feel like you have shackles on you? Or is this just one of those things where you were saying, hey, I know I had to take this position to kind of move on up? Do you just feel like this is a way to prove yourself as a coach? And I mean, I would assume you're probably learning all the ins and outs of like, what kind of kids do I need to be looking at so I'm not
Yeah.
wasting my time?
Yeah. So now look, so for me, it's about being efficient, right? About efficient when you're recruiting of not, again, like if I know a school is after, so like it's a double-sided thing. There's a bunch of answers there, but like I get cherry picked a lot of like kids coming off the roster. I've had it when a D2 started nearby and had kids cherry picked off a roster, went up and down the roster and they just called the entire team. They're like, hey, we got money. Here's money. Here's $500. Like, come, we're cheaper. And it's like, yo, go ahead. I don't need you on the roster if that's what you're gonna do, if that's what you care about. So the understanding that it is going to cost money is huge, but the value of what you get, right? Like I said, explaining to kids the value of what you get and that you're going to see where your money goes, the facility, the budgets, the things we do and get to do are not fundraised by the parents, are not paid for. It's all built into tuition in our budget and how we travel and what we do. So that's probably the number one thing there. Um, but it is I think recruiting is kind of same point of being honest. Like we talked about them being blunt. Like I tell kids they're gonna pay. I don't have that expectation that it's gonna be free from the start. And that's kind of for me, like it's just being efficient, going back to that of trying to be efficient when you're recruiting because it's a numbers game of I know you may say no, I may really like you, doesn't matter. It's are you willing to pay the cost to come to school? Um, so I think being honest and upfront with people at first, from the get-go of hey man, it's gonna cost some money. You still interested? And we don't really talk, you don't have to talk finances. A lot of times I talk to the club coaches more, or even some of the high school coaches where they just kind of have that understanding where I'm calling them first and saying, hey, you got a kid for me, you know somebody, or I think we're actually getting to the point with Huntington where this was our 10th season as a program. We finally have alumni that are out in different locations that now know we cost money. And they're getting to the point in their careers where they actually have talented kids where they're suggesting them, right? So it's like, hey, I got a kid. I actually have a kid here waiting for club. He's a young kid, but he's one that's, kind of interested. He's got some teammates we're really interested in. But they're high school coaches and alumni of ours. So it's getting to the point now with Huntington where we have that branch of coaches to where it kind of, not that it gets easier, but recruiting as you get older does get easier because you have more connections, right? You have more coaches and more people who know you, know the situation you're in to college, and it's easier to help that transition recruiting wise so that you can be more efficient. So I'm not wasting my time in a lower income area to where kids just can't afford it, to where, I'm not really wasting that time there. I just know, and it may be wrong to say, but I just can't look there, right? I don't know that kids can afford it. Maybe there's a kid in there that's willing to invest and take the loans out, but it just may be a ton of work to find and get that kid, right? So that's that challenging part of like, for me though, but again, like I said, it's just be honest, being honest. Hey man, it's gonna cost some money. I don't know how much yet. We'll figure that out, but you've got to be willing to invest, come to Huntington and play and wrestle Division 3. In not all cases it is a huge amount. I've looked at some. I've seen a package from a kid uh, uh, for one of the Midwest schools in D3. We're not even far off from what they are. We're about the same, honestly, when you think about it. So really our financial, like what we cost kids out of pocket, it's really not that much. I actually have a kid from Georgia that's looking at Elizabethtown, in Pennsylvania, and I'm pretty sure finances, when you think about flights and everything coming down, it's the same thing. We're the same price, you know? So it's not as much as people just like assume, and that's just the rhetoric that the D2s and NAIs down here want to spew to coaches at Huntington, and we're kind of an oddball there. So they kind of have that leg up of just everybody saying it, so it must be true. And it's like until kids come here and talk to us and we get that out to people that it's not, we're not really that much more expensive than any, whatever Lander, Newberry. We're really not that much more expensive. Maybe Lander's a state school, maybe a little bit more, but Newberry, I've seen some packages again where $5,000, $10,000 more maybe, you know. And I think you get a lot more for that with our budget and how we operate the program. So, um, but yeah, uh, yeah, I don't know. I think that answers it.
Well, mentioning going into Georgia a little bit and doing some recruiting then
Yeah.
in that state, are you utilizing some of your South Carolina connections and some of your ties in this state with some of the kids?
So I wish I was using my South Carolina ties as much. South Carolina is a tough state to recruit out of, and it's not that there's not kids that I would like and the talent there. I think the state does a good job of keeping kids in state. There's a lot of state grants,
Yeah.
man. Like if we're talking about a Georgia kid, me and a Carolina school is recruiting a Georgia kid, we're probably you're gonna be a little bit more, right? But not much. But if it's a South Carolina kid that I'm trying to recruit, it's gonna be a lot more that we cost just because they get so much state grants. So I honestly haven't had a South Carolina kid and haven't really recruited them since, just because again, that efficiency of like maybe I could find one, but it's like, man, I gotta focus my efforts somewhere else because I need numbers. I gotta, increase and I'm looking at talent to where I haven't really done that. But Georgia, so look, Georgia, one of our, I'd say two of our bigger schools that we've recruited out of are Greenbrier High School, more recently in Augusta, and Thomas Central County in South Georgia. So Thomas County, we've had one of our better kids that's ever been on our team, David Burgess. We have him. I think for us, he's a regional placer, which is very good. I think he like half of his wins are pins in college. And I think he's at 70 wins right now. So I think he's at 35 pins in his career. So he's done very well for us. And he's a three-time placer in Georgia, one-time finalist. He has the accolades and the wins over some of these guys that are very good. He's pinned a Fargo finalist this past year, wrestles for UNC. Like, he's got these top wins. He's a top guy. But because of him, like, and this is the other thing. We got him because his high school coach is actually used to be the high school coach of our admissions director when he was in high school. So it's kind of a small world of our connections of Huntington people that got us this kid. Now it landed us last year. It landed us a teammate of his workout partner. And this year now we have two others coming in next year. So we have four kids from that high school. We also recruited a guy from Greenbrier High School in Georgia. Turns out he's dating coach's daughter at the Greenbrier High School. So we got his daughter who's a potential Fargo All-American this year, but it also brought in two of her friends, right, that were there. And that kind of spiraled of, that's how we ended up getting those kids. And Augusta's a more affluent area. There are a lot more military in that area too. And that's a big thing, that a big niche that we found of the military parents, the military kids of, again, money. Not that money's no object and people don't understand the value there, but a lot of them get GI Bill, post 9/11 GI Bill, Chapter 36, 34, whatever it is. They're getting money to help pay for college, to where the kids really can choose where they want to go. So that does make it a little easier recruiting wise for us. So we've just happened to find those niches in those two areas that have helped us tremendously numbers wise.
Matt,
Um,
you mentioned the one kid was a pinner, got a lot of pins for you,
yeah.
and I know you were a pinner, had some funky cradles. I'm
Yeah.
curious, is it say as I do or do as I say when it comes to your coaching? You got a bunch of kids
So
getting funky down in
So,
Alabama?
so that is the age-old question, I think, with me and coaching styles of I actually don't teach any of it. I'll be honest with you. Um, there's probably some scenarios that my kids look at me and they're like, "What that, was that?" And I was like, "I'm making it up as we go along, man." It's like, don't worry about it. I think there's situations in some of the stuff that we do that like are kind of because of how I wrestled, but like honestly, it's the talent level of what we have, the skill. The college wrestling rules have changed completely to where 3-point takedowns now, it's almost like top wrestling is going away. As long as you can get out on bottom and you can take somebody down. I mean, we have a kid, 84 pounder, who's the top 15 kid in the country right now. He was last year. He's a two-time regional placer. Just missing, I mean, he's just missing that qualification, that qualifying nationals, but he sucks on top bottom. We don't wrestle it at all. And I don't care if everybody knows this. I think everybody does at this point. We stink top bottom, and he knows it too, right? So like all we teach is neutral defense. His defense is second to none, right? His takedowns he's got a head outside single that's really good. But if you think about it, right, college rules now, high school, it's 7 takedowns to tech fall somebody, and that's surprisingly easy to do, right? If you're really good on your feet offensively and defensively, right? So it's like for me, even teaching the kids how to ride legs, I may be wasting our time, right? We talked about being efficient, even recruiting wise. It's still the same thing when you're teaching and growing your technique of you got to be efficient, man. I can't be teaching top ride and stuff for this might help one kid. Me and that kid can go one on one and do that stuff, but as a whole, as a core, it's kind of a waste of time, because you got kids that'll never be on top, and all of a sudden you're teaching top stuff and funky stuff, and it's like, nah. I would say the biggest thing, like what transitioned with me into my coaching is probably defense, right? Of like, there's some defensive things that we do that are probably more like, hey, do as I do. Like this is like, doesn't matter size, right? Um, so that may be the one thing that's maybe translated into my style, but for the most part, man, and I wasn't very good on my feet offensively, but that's kind of, 75% of what we teach is all is offense.
Man, man, that hurts my heart to hear
I
that,
know, and
but
I'm sure everybody would love us to be a funky program, funk rolling
yeah.
people and doing this, and it's just not that we don't have the skill yet, man. It's like we have some kids that can do it, but it's like I've got other areas to perfect, and that's just kind of the restriction, like where we're at. I'm not getting kids, and this is kind of recruiting wise. I know this. I would love to pick a kid up from New Jersey and get a kid down here that knows what they're talking about. There's a lot of kids in Georgia, like I said, that have some of that talent. We just haven't been getting that yet. And I think as of the last 2 years, man, we really have picked up recruiting and talent, and it's been in Georgia. And I think we're getting to that point where maybe I can waste some time and recruit an up north kid, a Jersey kid, there's a maybe there. So I think it's a maybe we can do that. But yeah, it's just been I've got to where we're at talent wise. Just I've got to develop so much to where it's like I can't be doing some of the stuff I used to. Although I do it on them and I wrestle live still with the guys. I may hit them with some of it, but yeah.
Well, Matt, talking about recruiting a kid from New Jersey. Let's take a little trip down memory lane. You were part of a little bit of a Region 6 pipeline that made the venture down south.
Yeah. Yeah.
What was it for you that was a draw to come down south and maybe at the time break away from the norm of, say wrestling in New Jersey or Pennsylvania or in the Midwest? You were part of some of those guys from Region 6 that came back to
Yeah.
New came down to Newberry, and you
Yep.
guys had some success down there. What was the draw for you?
So and this wasn't a knock on New Jersey, and as big as the state was, like growing up, it was just wrestling the same kids all the time. It was me, Frank Pirelli, Freddie Sante. It was just wrestle those dudes every weekend you go to because they all want to see you and wrestling. It's like it was the same kids, right? So it was like that's why me and my father started traveling out west and going to other tournaments. And even if it was a crappy tournament, of just let's just go out there and wrestle instead, right? We've got the ability, we have the funds to do it. Let's just travel and wrestle out there. And I think that same mindset led me to go to college down south. I think one of the bigger things that is underlooked that people don't think about is like Division 1 schools up by us at that time. No offense to any of them, weren't really that good, right? I mean, Penn State was it was before Kale got there. Rutgers was before Goody got there, right? Ryder at the time didn't have as much oomph as they did now, right? So it's like Division 1 at the time was just like people went to Penn State and West Virginia just to go party and hang out, and it was cool. But it was for me, it was like I don't really, or Lockhaven was a bit, it's like I don't had no desire to really do that. Um, as much as I didn't like most kids around, it was like I kind of did my own thing. It was kind of I wasn't following kids. I didn't really care where everybody else went. So that was a big thing. But I also knew going, if I ended up going somewhere big, that I probably would have failed out within a semester or two anyways, and I would have ended up probably back in Newberry anyway. You know what I mean? So like I had a good understanding of that. And I think my parents both being college athletes, my dad went to Tusculum down in Tennessee, my mother went to Slippery Rock. So I kind of knew that of like just from them of just I just wasn't built for a big school and education wise. Forget the wrestling, right? You still have to go to school and graduate. So for me, that was a big one too of um, that kind of helped my look. But I honestly looked at a couple PA schools that I was like very interested in. I almost went to Shippensburg. I think East Stroudsburg was a big one I looked at just because all my coaches went there. Madigan, Salvatore, all those guys all wrestled Muir. I think they all wrestled at East Stroudsburg. And it was like, yeah, I'll go there and follow them, right? Like that, I looked up to those guys. So I don't think they were interested at the time, I guess. But so like the PA school just didn't work out. And it's just, there's a school down here that's been doing the right things recruiting wise and the right sales pitches of stuff. And I literally just sat down and said, hey, why not? It was one of those of like, I honestly signed my letter of intent right after I had surgery, like just woke up on my couch, laid out, and my father hands me a piece of paper and says, here, sign this. I was like, all right, here you go, send it back. And I fell back asleep. Right. And it was like, I already said I wanted to go there and I knew I was going there. So it wasn't like I got duped into doing it. But I did, me and my father had to talk about that behind, because Virginia Tech was in the mix too. And it was just, for me, I wanted to get away, right? And that's kind of what I think about a lot of when we were talking about bringing it back, right? Of recruiting New Jersey kid, recruiting up north kids to try and come down maybe to Alabama of you can't just keep wrestling. They're going to go to these schools and wrestle the same kids. You're going to go up north. You can go to any of those schools now, whatever. I mean, any school, right? Division 2, Division 3 up there. It's still going to be the same kids you're seeing every day, man. And the same tournaments. You're going to go to the East Stroudsburg Open. You're going to go to whatever Messiah, some of these tournaments that they have, and it's still going to be the same kids you've been seeing in high school. And it's like, why not get away, experience new life, new living. It's beautiful weather down here. It's beautiful women down here. It's like, why would you not want to come down here, right? And I get the attraction of, look, maybe our school is not the most talented right now. But I think about that, even myself going to Newberry, they also weren't that talented when I went down, right? It was whatever it was that attracted me to there. It was the people, the place, the coach of just, I did it. And I still think about that recruiting wise. I'm like, man, there's got to be somebody else out there but it has been a matter of time. Like why I haven't gone back up and recruited up north has really been an efficient thing of I haven't gotten our numbers to be where I need them to be. This is going to be the first year we've retained 20 kids, and I'm bringing in 13, which is well above, or 14, which is well above our number. I think our number's 30. We'll be at 34, potentially 35 if I get this kid this week. So we're finally at that point where I'm like, I got the numbers. And I got an assistant coach who I trust that's gonna, handle a brunt of some recruiting where maybe I can waste some time, find some kids up there, or find a kid at least, that's at a state place or somewhere, a qualifier, whatever. Got to start somewhere.
Yeah, it only takes one. It's what
It
happened with
does.
you in Newberry, and
Yeah.
you've
Yeah, no, and I think about that a lot, man. I really do. It does take a spiral effect if he's got friends. We actually have a girl, and I've been thinking about this a lot. She's been here. I think she's a junior now. We have a girl who plays beach volleyball that is from Southern, I think.
all right.
I think about this now. It's a little different with wrestling, where the girls want to come to South to go to a beach. We're apparently a big state when it comes to that beach volleyball, but they got somebody from up north there. So I mean, there's a market.
Yeah, and mentioned efficiency. I feel like
Yeah.
that's your mantra. You've mentioned it a
Yeah.
couple times. I am curious because you said that, the assistant AD had to yell at you, had to tell you to stop setting up
Yeah,
stuff.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
How do you kind of be that CEO of your program? You got a girls program there, you got a men's program. What do you go hands on in? What do you throw besides recruiting at your assistants? What do you enjoy about that position? What do you absolutely loathe about it?
So
Expense reports.
yeah, no, I hate do I that's so like I was about to say that literally doing my receipts every month. I freaking I like it's terrible. It's my worst, my least favorite thing to do. I'm not a budget guy either, so like even like so like we budget for all of our stuff in May or April, May, and then the budget's kind of set and starts over in June and we have our budget for the year. So it's also challenging doing that why like I freaking hate that. I hate doing it. I'm just kind of a hey, give me a money and I'll operate within it maybe. And it's like I don't want to do that. We're pretty open to hey, if you need more things, ask within reason. Maybe you get it, depending on how well the team and roster's going. But yeah, that's the easiest answer. My easiest one to answer is I hate doing that stuff. Although it is a huge part of being a head coach and a director and running that, it is a huge part. My wife is not an accountant, but she used to work in the business office here. She now works for a credit union, managing accountants. So it also does help having a wife with a financial background that can help with budgeting stuff and understanding and just making sure I know, hey, on this trip we can only spend this. It just makes that easier. Getting her involved as much as she's busy. But so the other questions, man. So I running both programs. I think I got really lucky being able to do it. In our position, being a director is kind of different than me being the head men's and women's coach. And that was something kind of a detail that I didn't want to be because you can't do both. It is impossible. And I don't care who you are and who says you can. Uh, Somewhere it struggles, right? So if I would just sit here and try and run both myself and these guys and my women's coach was an assistant, like it just would be the women's program would probably take a dip because everybody wants to focus on the men's program, right? So it's just and it's unfair. I think of Title IX a lot when I think about that. And it's like there's no way any of that's within Title IX like rules and regulations where you're funneling all your no all your time and effort into the men's program, which is what a lot of programs do, and I hate seeing it. So we kind of had this talk with our program with our administration early on of I need a coach that we can bring in that potentially can be the head coach and they can run and operate it themselves and depending on who we hire, I may not have to do a whole lot. I may just have to direct as the title kind of is and kind of show, regardless of what their title is. Albeit, and that was kind of I think we got really lucky with who we hired for the women. But Lillian Humphreys, she's actually a PC grad, wrestled for Mark Cody. Um, and she had an all right career. She was the first Division I graduate as far as women go. Not the most accoladed career out there, right? Like she wasn't a top name, I'd say, in the country. but she kind of shadowed Mark for a while, for her last 2 years and helping out and managing and even recruiting stuff, which I say is huge in our job. So it was like we got really lucky hiring her. And I also had a relationship with her a little bit from a coaching standpoint of I kind of knew who she was already, being that I was coaching in the same area she's from. We had a kid at Spartanburg that we were trying to get into PC at the time. So me and him were traveling down to their club team and working out. So I knew of her and knew her. I may have done a camp while she was in high school once. So we knew we had a, I mean, we had a working relationship there of knowing each other. So when we had a position open, it was kind of a right fit to get her in. And she kind of took off and showed very early on that uh, I don't really need you to help much in that sense, right? So I got very lucky in that she didn't need me to help much. It really didn't. She needs some guidance and some yes, no's and don't do this. It was easy at first because all she had to do was recruit. Recruiting was 100% of her job. We had no girls on roster. We had maybe one girl that was on campus that I recruited that was like, let's just try and get somebody in. So that was kind of one side of that, hey, let's just be able to manage her, right? I just had to direct and manage her and the program and really just show her and let her shadow me of like, here's how I'm running the men's program. Like, this is what you're going to have eventually, right? Your own budget, your own program, your own everything. Um, so, so being able to do that, has been awesome. The men's side, we've kind of, not that we've funneled through assistants a bunch, it's been a little bit more of a challenge. Um, but I mean, it kind of has, it's kind of been, I think that's been our weak point of recruiting and just a weak point of where we've been at in our program is just stability in our assistant coach. Because it's been every year, every 2 year, we get a new coach, and I think that's a hard thing with recruiting and with building a program, right? You're going to go sell a family that you're going to be here and be here for him or her for the next 4 or 5 years, and yet you've got assistant coaches that are funneling in and out. I think it's a bad look, right? Because they're also doing a lot of the brunt work of finding a kid. And it's like I've had assistant coaches in and out that have just they've been fine, they've been working and doing stuff, but it's been tough finding that guy that really we trust and know can do that stuff and sell and maybe the potential of him being here for years. I think we're at the point now where we have somebody. We just hired our heavyweight, who's a excuse me. Again, he's been one of the leaders for our program. He's actually been a strength coach for us for the last 2 years. As much as he's been a student strength coach, he's been certified to be a strength coach for the last 2 years, and arguably he's been one of the top heavyweights in the country in D3 for the last 2 years. Although I don't think any rankings will show that. We have some wins that will say otherwise. We beat a D2 champ. We've got some kids that, or a D2 All-American, excuse me. He was ranked number one in the country coming in this year, but he's got some top wins, and we've beaten some top guys in the country at our regional tournament, which kind of a side note here with our regional tournament. I always like to talk about this, but our regional tournament is one of the hardest tournaments in the country. They actually send us out to the lower Midwest region, which depending on how familiar you are with D3, the lower Midwest region has 7 of the top 20 teams in the country. One of them is Wartburg, who's the number one team in the country and has been. North Central is the number two, right? They're arguably probably in the running to win it next year, right? So we have those two, which is the 1 and 2 team in our region. We have, I mean, it's probably 5 other teams out there that have guys that are ranked number one in the country, number two. You know what I mean? 65 pounder that I talked about earlier, and I keep pointing behind me because I have our whenever I talk about my roster, we have our like depth chart behind me, and I always reference it. But our 65 pounder we talked about is very talented. We love him. He's been a top 20 guy in the country. His weight class this year, he did not place. 7 of his kids in that region were top 15 in the country. There were 7 other kids above him that were top 15. And it's like, again, the 1 and 2 kid in the country were in our region. So everybody is fighting for second and third. Because in Division 3, only top 3 qualify. Currently, it's going to change next year. It's still going to be top 3. They're adding a region next year. But you got to think about that when qualifying for a national tournament and discussing that with potential recruits of you of like, why I haven't been in a national tournament yet? Well, here's the number one reason. I can have one of the best kids in the South come to my program who has wins over Fargo All-Americans, state champs, Georgia. I mean, All-Americans, right? Has wins over these guys, and we've never qualified in Division 3. So it's the hardest thing to do in the country. Okay. Um, but Jack, my heavyweight, was talking about it. Again, some of the top wins in the country. So he's a top guy. So he's been around the program 5 years now as a student, a student, an athlete. He's been coaching strength. Honestly, he's been doing recruiting stuff for us when we have events on campus. He's actually been speaking to families and kids individually to where we kind of knew when he was graduating that I had an assistant job open and that I actually held out for 3, 4 months until he graduated to hire somebody just to get him in because I knew he would be a good fit. And so far, we've seen the last 2 months, 3 months, it's been a good hire. So we're excited about the potential of that for the coming and what he can do. But it's been a big challenge for us there. We're just stability and coaching staff there.
Matt, you have mentioned the tough conference. You
Yeah.
have mentioned 3.0 to get into the school. You have mentioned it being, you're gonna have to pay. If I'm a recruit, why do I want to come to Huntington?
Yeah, man, that depends, right? Like that's gonna be you've got great coaching. We've got, a great coaching staff. It's a great college. Look, our degrees is something I talk about a lot, and it's a big thing with Division 3 is the graduating. Our kids graduate. Some of the former alums that we have, and this is outside of wrestling and talent and who they are. We have coaches, we have teachers, we have stuff like that with kids and degrees like that. But we have kids and we have 2 kids that graduated that are accountants. We have a kid who graduated who's a physical therapist now. We have a kid who he's starting his own law practice, right? We have another kid who just got accepted into law school. He'll start in August. So we have a bunch of top degrees there, top of the line stuff of like these people aren't just graduating and then, you know, have no, you know what I mean, or fighting MMA or doing stuff. It's just they have like careers. And most of these kids start these careers while they're in college. And this is an example I have. So if you're wanting to come to college, you're a potential recruit, and it's like, look, man, wrestling to me is the easy part. Like we're gonna teach you how to wrestle, you're gonna get better. That is like what you already know to do. But what you may not know is your career path, right? Where are you gonna go? Right? What do you want to do? Do you want to coach? That's great. We can actually help with that. I have coaches email us all the time. We're trying to set up one of our rising seniors to get a job by the time he graduates in probably one of the top schools in the state. So we're working there, but that's kind of the potential. What do you want to do in your career? What do you want to do? Right? If there's a somewhere you want to be, we have the right tools to get you there. Um, the job, the lineup, like you're gonna get experience while you come to school here, and that's a big thing. But we're also gonna help you, get a job. And I don't mean like it's not gonna be, hey, graduate, go figure it out. We do a lot of planning. Not even I don't. It's not even me. It's a lot of the way our college works. They work tremendously with planning after college, right? Of the senior meetings, the junior stuff. We do a bunch of stuff where jobs and people come to campus here and just meet and greets, and we make them do internships their senior year. We make them do so one of the coolest things we do is actually so the kid who's a physical therapist now did it's a senior capstone project. So instead of doing like a 40-page whatever, at the end of your senior year, it's basically a study that he got to do because he was an exercise science major. It was studying like how carb loading affects your VO2 max. And we have a VO2 max machine, a treadmill, we have a bod pod to measure body fat. We have a science lab on campus. So he got to study, basically had a bunch of wrestlers, a bunch of athletes, a bunch of non-athletes, eat a bunch of bread, carb load, and then run on a treadmill, right? And he got to study this in depth of doing this. So really what that was him gaining that experience working with people, testing blood sugar levels, testing their heart rate, right? Seeing their VO2 max and getting hands-on experience in his field, right? And he's now working with physical therapy where he kind of has this study that he did kind of on his back and so he has kind of that experience that we gave and kind of gained and provided him with. But he also, so this is one of the things, like he had to take a gap year in between his PT school. And in that time, it was like, hey, what are you going to do? Well, we kind of helped him find a job. He was a local kid. Hey, we got an alumni who owns an I think it was an optometrist's office where he kind of, it's in similar field, similar kind of feel to what he wanted to do. And we helped him get a job and interview and get hired kind of part-time before he went on to, PT school. right? And that's a big factor into what we do. Our two accountants that we talk about, Jacob and Andrew Smith, they're brothers. Uh, they're they did an internship with the Department of Revenue in the state of Alabama while in college, their senior year. And this is something that we kind of, it's an open, I think they have the internship. It's kind of, I don't know if it's strictly for Huntington students or whatnot, but these kids have to go and interview for it. But they both got an internship with the Department of Revenue their senior year through our network of people and paid internship, mind you. So they were a senior in college wrestling for us still. Season got on, their internship started, and they got paid. And then that turned into a salaried position the minute they graduated, right? So this is something that we can do for kids of, look, we care about your degree. We want to get you better wrestling wise. That's a fact. You have a great coach. I have the accolades, the experience. I can take you where you want to go, right? And we have some success now roster wise where you can promote that, but we're also trying to find you a career path after college, right? Because that's why you come to college. It's not just to wrestle, or that's not why you're looking Division 3 at least, right? I think there are divisions in the NAIs and the D2s of certain schools that you're just going to wrestle. You could care less what you do, that you're just going to wrestle, go there, right? We have kids that come here that have kind of these paths that they want to take, and we're that vehicle that can help you get there. Not to mention, look, the other recruiting pitch that I said earlier, it's beautiful weather and beautiful women down here. So, I mean, you can't beat it, right?
That's a big sell for
It's a
college
big
kids.
sell. We got a beach volleyball court outside, man. Our volleyball team's huge, man. We got 40 girls on it. It's like,
That's a
so,
big sell.
yeah, it hasn't worked yet, I'll be honest, but I just it's
It's
just,
gonna. It's
yeah,
gonna.
yeah, yeah.
Matt, you mentioned the physical therapy kid getting into law school. You got some kids that are
Yeah.
getting education, going into education and coaching. Is there any particular outside of those majors that might be unique specifically to Huntington?
Yeah, so that's what I tell kids too. We don't usually have, we're not a specific, like, hey, Huntington College is great at this. We kind of have, we're a liberal arts college. We kind of have that general, you know, it's kind of whatever. We have a bunch of programs. One of the programs we love actually here is our criminal justice program. It's a newer 5-year-old program, but it's been kicking off. And the fun part about that program is it was started by a former wrestler, not an alumni of Huntington. He's actually from South Carolina, which the small world that we are, a couple of the kids that I had wrestle at Spartanburg, this guy was a resource officer at the high school that they were at, and actually an assistant coach for them. Didn't know any of this at the time until he got here. I think like 3, 4 years later when we got connected with him here, that we found that out. But yeah, the criminal justice program is founded by, a former wrestler. He actually wrestled in the Marine Corps for the All Marine team, but was a practice dummy. And it's fun that we can say that he tells the story to our kids, and that's kind of one of our. We do a like, what's the name of the program that we have, where it's a mentorship, kind of a faculty mentorship with the program, kind of connecting students with faculty members here, and that's like a no-brainer, obvious. Like, hey, let's get him involved with the wrestling program and kind of keep him around. And he helps out recruiting wise. He'll speak at events. And if we have a recruit on campus who wants to talk wrestling and academics here and how we do things, he can do that. But he'll also come to practices every now and then. He watches our events, but he'll sit down with kids and kind of mentor as well. So that's kind of a unique thing that we have there. Um, yeah.
Matt, I got one last one for you before we get into the Final Four if Rich doesn't have anything else. You've coached junior college, you wrestled Division 2,
Yeah.
you're at Division 3. The oldest debate of time. Which one's the toughest? What's the comparability? I have my own answer, but I'm curious what your answer
Well,
is.
I'll say it now. The obvious answer of where I'm at is D3 is the hardest division in the country. And I only say that, right? I wrestled D2. D2 is still hard. Um, I use my heavyweight for an example, or my assistant coach now, right? We pinned a kid from D2 as a D2 All-American. Um, I don't think we haven't wrestled some of the top guys in D3, although they're in our region. We have wrestled them. We don't have any wins over a lot of those top guys. Like we have wins over a top D2 kid in the country, and we haven't qualified for the national tournament. D3 is harder just because of sheer numbers, right? There's 129 Division 3 teams in the country. This is another one of my recruiting pitches of like, hey man, you want to come to a real division and wrestle? NAI has like 50 teams. D2 is not much better. There's about 70, 75 teams in Division 2. D3 is 129. Good luck. Only 3 from each region qualify in your weight class. Okay, so the regional tournament, that's going to change. There's going to be 7 regions and top 3 from each. So a 21-man bracket at the national tournament, but that's 21 kids out of 129. So for me, although I wrestled Division 2 and may have said otherwise when I was in college, I actually got into a fight with a kid over this years ago. He was a D3 guy from Wartburg, and I was I was a D2 guy, but I actually said the opposite. But now being in D3, I was naive to D3. Um, D3 is harder. JUCO's hard, but JUCO is not. I think JUCO is I think easier, honestly. But
We
NAI is
might get a
NAI
fight.
is NAI is NAI is the
Sold me.
easiest for me.
Sold
NAI
me.
might be the easiest for me, I think.
All right. All right.
Nah, man, I respect JUCO though. JUCO still, it's
Well,
in my heart. Holds a place in my
I
heart.
think to your point, just the depth, right? Like I always say that like the top 3 to top 5 in JUCO are tough,
Yeah,
but that back half, the whether it be 5 through 8, there can be a huge drop off.
yeah,
I kind of feel the same with Division 2, and like Rich always says about Division 3 too. He always says, well, the numbers, there's just more
yeah.
teams.
There's so many, and it's just like, look, JUCO's been different since COVID hit, and we have 4-year guys in JUCO still, and 3-year guys in JUCO still. So, and obviously, like I said, I've been in JUCO 8 years. Like I understand it. I've got buddies that I still talk to that coach some of the top teams in the country there, but I mean, I laugh because it's like, dude, you have 3-year JUCO kids and 4-year JUCO kids. It's like, what do you mean? It's easy. Like, what are we talking
Mhm.
about here? You got grown men wrestling 18-year-olds. Like, it's not the same. These kids are in there, they're 26 years old wrestling, the national tournament. Sure, he's an All-American. Like, great. Um, and we had this argument with a friend of mine who helped me get my job out in Kansas. We argued this at a coaches meeting at JUCO once. Of There was a point in time with JUCO where JUCO is struggling numbers wise, and this might have been while Mike was still at Middlesex, right? But and he might have been at the same meeting, but it was a point in time where like JUCO again, like they barely have enough kids to have teams to have a national tournament, and it's not a knock against them. They're still again the team the Power Five in JUCO, nobody's touching them, right? And they are like unreal, right? They're good for a reason. Um, but like numbers wise as a whole, and I don't know how many people know this. I mean, Jimmy, I know you know this, but it's D1 and D2 in JUCOs, or D1 and D3 actually. Although schools operate as D2s, the wrestling is just scholarship and non-scholarship, right? So at Spartanburg, we were a Division 1 JUCO, which meant we gave scholarship money. We were not a true Division 1 college because most Division 1s just give them full rides, or they work out their package to where they don't pay anything. So we were a Division 3 college. We actually costed kids $20,000 a year to go to JUCO, which it was absurd. They're actually an NAI school now. They moved and went NAI. They dropped wrestling though. But that's the thing with JUCO, where it was like, hey, we're struggling this and that's unfair for the non-scholarship schools because they were never going to compete with the Division 1 scholarship schools, right? Very rare do you find a school that can. There's been your Rochesters every now and then, some other I forget the D3s or the JUCOs that have been top in the country before. I think years ago there was actually a non-scholarship that won the team title uh, and beat a Division 1 school, but they shared a trophy or there was a tie or something like that. It was a bigger deal. Uh, but like, yeah, so the argument was, well, let's just make it an open tournament because they were trying to move the national tournament bracket up from a 32-man bracket to like whatever the next size up from a 64-man bracket is what they wanted to do. And it was like, if you're going to increase the national tournament from 64 man bracket, just make it an open tournament, right? You're just going to diminish everything. And it's like, what are we doing? You got to actually, not that you have to shrink it up, because they're trying to be fair to the non-scholarships, but it's like the bracket's too big. There's so many kids in this tournament. And that is where I argued with JUCO of why the national tournament in JUCO is so hard. This is a 32-man bracket. You're trying to win a national title, and so we had a kid, Ryan Coakley. He's an assistant coach, I think, at Iowa Central now, pinned Richie Lewis, first round of the national tournament, right? Like we pinned Richie Lewis, who, I mean, you guys are aware of Richie Lewis, another Region 6
Mhm.
guy, right? Tom Reese guy, Rutgers guy, right? We pinned him first round of the national tournament. We were the reason he didn't win a national title that year. And it was like, that's how freaking challenging JUCO tournament can be. Because it was like in our region out west, we had one of the harder regions. Our kid was a wild card, had a headlock. That was pretty mean, but we also, if you made it past the second period with us, you might beat us, right? Which is funny because Richie actually did that where we headlocked him in the first, beat him. Second period, he chose not to touch us and just go basically super ducks and doubles and low singles and beat the shit out of us afterwards. Um, I think he actually teched us like 20-5 or something. But we had him first round, right? Uh, but that's just where I think that tournament can be hard, right? The JUCO tournament can be hard, man. But like to me, that's where Division 2 now. I think maybe I just think talent wise in Division 2 is just not up there, up to par. Where I think D3 just is filled with talent, man. And there's been more schools adding Division 3 right now. It's crazy. And I almost went Division 3 myself. I think I would have. My coaches all pushed me to go Division 3. I think when I graduated, it was either you went Division 1 or you just went Division 3. You
Yep.
know, D2s were still up north. We're not, that was kind of an odd thing to do is to go Division 2.
Yeah.
I think you started that trend, sir.
I
For
might have, right? I
Region
might have.
Six at least. Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, could
Rich,
have.
you got anything else for Matt before we get in the final four?
I mean, I could talk all night, but I want to be
Yeah, no.
respectful of Matt's time. So let's get into the Final Four.
All right, Matt, first question I got for you. Are you a coffee drinker?
Yeah, second cup of the day already. I've
All
got a
right.
fancy Nespresso machine that makes me coffee.
How do you take your coffee?
Black.
Black.
I have a
All right.
joke that I won't say right now. My wife will get upset, but there's a joke about how I take my coffee. It's the complete opposite of my life. It just it makes sense, but it's
Matt, do you have any daily practices or rituals you do on a regular basis to show up as the strongest version of Matt Oliver?
try and be consistent. And I try to be a scheduled guy. But yeah, just trying to be consistent.
Matt, what are you listening to right now? Music, podcasts, audiobooks? Are you reading anything?
Silence. That's what I drive in a car with no music and no, I will drive silent.
That's
Um,
wild.
it is a wild thing. I have to I'll drive and just get into my thoughts and just think whether it's about wrestling or whether it's about coaching or whatever it is to where like anything that does play, I don't hear anyway. Um, or it's conversations or I'm on the phone doing that stuff.
He's
The music,
recruiting.
that kind of stuff. Yeah, right? Recruiting never stops. So I don't really have a like, hey, what am I listening? What do I do? I just, it's whatever's on.
Matt, last one we have for you. Do you have a guilty pleasure or guilty pleasures? Could be
Oh man,
food, could be spirits.
man, I don't know. It stumped me. I don't know what I do, honestly. Maybe a cigar has been my guilty pleasure lately. If I enjoy smoking a cigar out by my pool right now. I think that's been a recent one.
All right, that's a good one. Do you have a
Yeah.
particular brand or anything?
Either Perdomos or Romeos.
Okay.
Yeah.
Any whiskey with that or just
There's, yeah, there's also, of course,
okay.
and I enjoy, look, that's
The
been one
two
of my,
go hand in hand. That's why I
yeah,
was
right.
asking.
Being an athlete my entire life in wrestling, just so strict I was in my life. I've been recently smoking cigars and sitting back and drinking,
Hey, no
enjoying life.
judgment here. I've had
Yeah,
my fair share of cigars on the porch at the
yeah,
with the fire going for sure.
yeah. It's nice.
Yeah.
I do it. That would have to be my one current, yeah, what I like, what I enjoy.
All right. That works for me.
Yeah,
Matt, thank you for joining us. Like Rich and I always say, when we have college coaches on, it gives us another team to root for. And I appreciate your transparency, realizing that you're in this specific, I can't talk right now, lane, and to cater towards your lane and those kind of kids. I appreciate it. Sometimes
yeah,
you talk to coaches, not so much on here, but getting recruited, you're talking to coaches like this dude's a used car salesman. But
correct.
you were 100%, hey, this is what we offer, this is what our limitations are, and these are the kids we want. So thank you so much for
Yeah.
that, and thank you for your time tonight.
Yeah, no problem. Again, I appreciate being on, man. It was good. I had fun.
Yeah, it was good catching up with you, Matt. And like
Yeah,
Jimmy
man.
said, we look forward to supporting another school with wrestling in the South, and even more so a Division III school in the South.
Yeah, appreciate